It all started at 11:47 p.m. under a full moon, with a sky that looked like it was holding its breath. I was sprawled out on my patio chair, nachos in one hand, when I heard it, a faint hiss from my hose line. At first, I chalked it up to the wind messing with me, but something didn't sit right. My water bill had doubled last month, and here's the kicker. The HOA had banned daytime watering weeks ago. Everyone's lawns were turning into crispy beige disasters, except Karen's. Her garden? It was glowing like it belonged on the cover of Better Homes and Hypocrisy. I grabbed my binoculars, squinted through the darkness, and muttered to myself, this woman's about to find out what happens when you mess with someone who grew up with 3 brothers, a toolkit, and a petty streak longer than Route 66. Karen wasn't just the HOA president of Elmwood Estates. She was the self-appointed landscaping overlord. Her license plate literally read, Rules 1, and she wielded her power like a dictator in gardening gloves. She once fined me $50 because my Halloween pumpkin sat on the porch 2 days past November 1st. Another time, she measured my grass with a ruler and left a neon pink citation because it was half an inch too tall. But for all her rules, her perfect garden didn't add up. The city had slapped us with water restrictions after a 3rd drought warning, twice a week, early mornings only. I complied. My lawn went from suburban green to tumbleweed chic. Yet Karen's hydrangeas looked like they'd been blessed by a plant god, while mine resembled rejected salad toppings. I didn't notice the water bill spike at first. Summer rates creep up, right? But when a late notice landed in my mailbox claiming I owed triple the usual amount, I started digging, literally. I walked my property line, checked for leaks, tested the irrigation timer, even called the water company. No error, sir, they said. Consumption's correct. That's when I spotted it. My hose didn't coil the way I'd left it. I stared at the end. Someone had slapped a splitter on it, and one sneaky line snaked through the hedge into Karen's backyard. I stood there, jaw on the ground. This suburban pirate had tapped into my water supply. Bold, illegal, and, worst of all, hypocritical. This was the same woman who'd cited me for unauthorized wind chimes because they didn't match my house paint. The same Karen who rang my doorbell at 6:12 a.m. to complain my garbage can was visible from a street. She'd been stealing my water while enforcing the very rules she broke, thinking I wouldn't notice. I could have marched to the HOA board, but Karen ran it like a miniature dictatorship. Monthly newsletters, color-coded compliance charts, the works. That'd get me nowhere fast. Instead, I decided to watch. That night, I dragged out a lawn chair, grabbed some chips, and taped a GoPro to a tiki torch. I waited. Sure enough, like a raccoon who'd memorized trash day, Karen struck. She glided out of the darkness at 11:47 p.m., a polyester ghost in matching gloves and visor, dragging a hose section under a gnome and clipping it to a hidden drip system. She didn't even look around, just pure, smug HOA presidential confidence. I checked the timestamp. She probably had it scheduled like a hit job. I didn't sleep that night, not out of rage, but inspiration. The next day, I drove 2 towns over to a hardware store where no one asks why you're buying vinegar in bulk. I loaded up industrial blue clothing dye, 3 bottles of dish soap, a glitter-infused car wash additive, and some garden-grade check valves. If Karen wanted my water, she'd get everything I gave her, literally. Back home, I turned into a mad scientist. I rigged a pressure-safe garden sprayer and backfed the concoction into her stolen line late that night. I even left a discreet note by the hose, do not touch, decorative, just in case she got nosy. Morning came, and oh, it was beautiful. I wasn't outside, but I heard it, a high-pitched, HOA-issued shriek that bounced across fences and hit my ears like victory music. I ran to the window. Karen stood in her garden, holding a once white, rose now dyed, smufflatte blue. Her flower bed was a mess of bright blue petals, foam, and a glittery sheen that shimmered like toxic unicorn tears. Her face twisted in rage, disbelief, and horror. I sipped my coffee and waved. She didn't wave back. She stormed over later, dragging her hose like a wounded snake. "What did you do?" she shouted, waving a blue-stained glove. "My flowers. My soil smells like vinegar and dawn." I tilted my head, all innocent. That's odd. My hose has been acting funny too. Maybe someone's been messing with it. Her mouth opened, ready to spit fire, but she stopped. She knew I knew, and more importantly, I wasn't scared. I'm filing a complaint, she hissed. With who? You. I asked with a smile. Her eye twitched. This isn't over, she said, storming off, trailing sparkles in her wake. That's when I realized this wasn't just a prank. I declared war. Karen went quiet for 2 days. No scowls, no sticky notes disguised as community reminders. But her yard told a different story. The white roses looked tie-dyed by an angry toddler. Foam clung to petals like stubborn soap suds, and her hydrangeas glowed electric blue with a hint of glitter. It was beautiful, horrific but beautiful. She was plotting, I could feel it. So was I. That first mix? A beta test. I'd gone light on the vinegar and skipped the heavy stuff. Now, knowing she was still tapping my line, it was time to go gourmet. Sipping coffee the next morning, I watched her scrub her hose with lemon juice and what looked like holy water. I started mixing. Vinegar and soap as the base, cornstarch for extra gunk, beet juice for a reddish-brown bleeding plant effect, a more aggressive blue dye meant for denim, and biodegradable cosmetic glitter for that disco accent vibe. I hooked it to the pressurized backfeed and let it rip at 2 a.m. By sunrise, I was in my living room window like a kid on Christmas. Right on cue, Karen emerged, hose in hand, oblivious. She twisted the spigot. A faint fizzing noise, then the shriek. The foamy mess sprayed everywhere, coating her gloves, shoes, and even her cat, which bolted across the yard with a sparkly blue tail. Her garden looked like a crime scene from a children's book. She stomped, shouted, muttered about chemical warfare, and kicked over flower pots. A neighbor peeked out, saw the blue carnage, and ducked back inside. I could have used dramatic background music. Karen didn't take it lying down. By sunset, she called an emergency HOA meeting, citing deliberate horticultural sabotage. The irony was thicker than my cornstarch mix. She ranted under her pergola, now draped with tarps to hide the Technicolor mess, accusing me without evidence and hinting I'd violated federal environmental codes. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need to be. Phil, a soft-spoken HOA board retiree, was sliding into whistleblower territory. He'd seen her hose set up, heard her brag about borrowing water at a wine-soaked mixer, and now, after a meltdown, he was done. That night, he left an anonymous envelope on my doorstep. Old HOA minutes and a note that read, "We're sick of her too. Keep going." This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was a movement. 2 days later, Karen hosted a garden showcase, her yard hastily replanted and covered in burlap to hide the stains. She even trucked in nursery pots and passed them off as hers. Classic Karen fraud. I showed up with polite smiles and a GoPro hidden in a lawn gnome. As she bragged about her water-smart flowers and efficient community resource use, the gnome filmed it all, capturing the stolen splitter setup. I didn't say a word, just nodded, complimented her, and left. That night, I uploaded the video anonymously to the neighborhood Facebook group and cross-posted it to Reddit's r/entitled people. I added timestamps and circled the splitter in red. Within hours, it exploded. Comments flooded in. People recognized her voice, her garden, her smug tone. Someone from the local news even reached out to the HOA. Karen fired back with an all-caps email about online trolls spreading misinformation, but it was too late. Neighbors confessed to mysteriously high water bills and suspiciously moist lawns. She'd been running a secret hose network, and I wasn't her only victim. Phil became my inside man, slipping me intel from Karen's secret board meetings. He even sent a draft of her proposed horticultural ethics clause, a passive-aggressive manifesto, so absurd it was almost funny. Then he left me a package, a moisture meter, a USB stick, and a note in shaky cursive. "Keep pushing." She's cracking. I knew I had to go bigger. Karen had started planting vines along my fence. Kudzu, the zombie apocalypse of plants. It choked my solar lights, smothered my rosemary bush, and crept toward my grill. I emailed the HOA with photos and a PDF titled The Vine Invasion, a cautionary tale. Their response? Aesthetic, non-threatening, and not visible from the street. Classic. But then I hired a professional landscape inspector. Turns out her vines overlapped a protected greenbelt buffer, illegal under city code. The inspector's report was gold. Photos, measurements, violations, all stamped with municipal authority. The city sent Karen a bright yellow letter. She screamed so loud the neighbor's dog howled. She stormed to her HOA office, her garage, and slammed the door, rattling the fake ivy overhead. She called an emergency meeting, but no one showed. Phil said she sat alone with her laminated complaint forms and untouched cucumber sandwiches. Her power was crumbling. I called a favor for my cousin Joey, a B-roll editor at the local news station. I laid it all out: the water theft, the glitter hose, the blue flowers, the viral video, the city violation. "You had me at blue flowers," he said. That weekend, the news van rolled in, framing it as a community highlight on water bills and HOA tensions. I stood by my now-locked spigot, a camera pointed at it, and spilled the tea. The splitter, the midnight watering, the hypocrisy. I didn't name Karen. The visuals did the work. They interviewed her next. She came out with lemon bars and a plastic smile, gushing about her award-winning roses until they asked about the city violation. Her smile cracked. She blamed jealous neighbors and vandals, then stormed off mid-interview when they pressed for proof. The 3-minute segment aired that night, and the neighborhood lit up. Even the guy who only left his house in a bathrobe had an opinion. The HOA vote was packed. Lawn chairs, cookies, and me with the blue hose in a bin labeled Exhibit A. Karen stood at the front, arms crossed, surrounded by rule books like legal armor. She launched into a furious speech, calling herself the HOA and accusing Phil of a coup. When she finished, the silence was deafening. Phil called the vote: 8 for removal, 1 abstention, 0 for her. She demanded names, call me a sociopathic gardener. I kind of liked it. Grabbed her rule book and stormed out, muttering about lawyers and her own splinter HOA. As she passed, she glared at the hose, but kept walking. The room didn't cheer, just exhaled, like we'd all been holding our breath too long. Phil took over as interim president, repealing Karen's dumbest rules, like the wind chime color mandate, and installing lockable spigots everywhere. We threw a block party, water wars, the ceasefire. Karen's house went quiet. The vines were gone. Her flowers faded. Then a for sale sign popped up, touting unique garden features. I almost bought it for the irony. But Karen had one last trick. One morning, I smelled it, a faint chemical tang. A bluish puddle crept from my fence, laced with dye, glitter, and a sour vinegar edge. My mix. I followed it to a broken hose, hers, half buried at the property line. She dumped a diluted version into my garden as a final screw you. Problem was, gravity didn't care. The slope sent it flowing back into her yard. By noon, her daisies were blue slime, foam bubbling through the mulch. Phil called, laughing. HOA got complaints about dye runoff from her lot. They fined her for landscape contamination, a new rule passed unanimously. She paced her lawn, yelling into her phone about suing the HOA, the city, even the postal service for delivering the fine in an aggressive envelope. Karen's house didn't sell fast. Buyers pulled up, saw the blue-streaked lawn, and peeled out. Eventually, a young couple with rescue dogs and chaotic energy bought it. I met them on move-in day. They laughed at the hose scars and said they'd build a koi pond. Sounds fun. They grinned when I warned them about the ground's colorful past. That's when I knew the war was over. I stood on my porch that night, watching their kitchen lights flicker, breathing clean, dye-free air. My garden was thriving. No foam, no sabotage, just green and butterflies. I kept the camera, though you never know when another HOA Tyrant might rise. Sometimes, watering my flowers legally, mind you, I glance next door and remember the stakeouts, the concoctions, the blue petals, the memes. Karen screaming as her garden turned into performance art. The best part? It all happened because she underestimated how far I'd go to protect my hose. She thought I was a pushover. She didn't expect glitter, city code, or a neighborhood rising up with lawn chairs and popcorn to watch her rain crash down. She's gone now. The grass is greener, the hoses are locked, and peace, sweet, ridiculous peace, finally reigns in Elmwood Estates.